Hey, soccer fans, welcome back to the next episode of the Feed the Fire podcast. I'm your host, Nick, and as always, we're talking Major League Soccer and the Chicago Fire. I appreciate everyone who has reached out, exchanged messages, followed along with the show, and I just, on a little personal note here, thanks to everyone who interacted with our post on LinkedIn. Just on Friday, I put out a post that said, look, I love my job, I love the people I work with, but hobbies are important. And here's my hobby. Here's the podcast that I host and produce. And it actually, I don't know if this is good or bad, got the most interactions I've had on a LinkedIn post probably in a couple of years. So it was great to see everybody jumping on and leaving comments. Even my former ticket rep and someone else who used to be in sales with the Fire who I'd interacted with a few years back. So Evan, Maddie, thanks for that. And even one of the legal groups that I'm a part of picked up on the post as well. So it was really fun to see having a little bit of this personal professional crossover on LinkedIn. So it was fun there. But really, thank you to you all who are the listeners who really are driving this show forward. And we've definitely seen growth in terms of YouTube interaction as well as downloads via podcast. So I appreciate that. Also, I want to say one more personal note before we get into all of the preseason roster updates, transfer tracker, everything that's going on. We're going to catch you up on all of the developments with the league roster rules that have been updated and changed, as well as what the Fire are doing and some of the moves around the league. I also just, again, on a personal note, want to thank one of my colleagues at work. Thank you so much, Anna. She was out at an estate sale and saw this very, very cool Chicago Fire scarf that she picked up. And she's like, I can't just leave it sitting here when I know Nick would love to have it. So it's a Youth Academy scarf, which I haven't seen one of these. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. Very cool Youth Academy scarf. It's got the Fire name on one side, and on the back side here, a very nice picture of the skyline. So Anna, thank you so much. I'm going to have to find someplace to put this on my wall of scarves behind me. But without further ado, let's dive into the reason we're here, talking Chicago Fire, Major League Soccer, roster moves, roster rules and updates. And we're going to start, though, with our hometown Fire team, talking a little bit about their preseason here. So the club just wrapped up a couple of preseason friendlies down in West Palm Beach, Florida. They beat Nashville 4-1 on Tuesday and beat Sporting Kansas City 1-0 yesterday, Saturday the 24th. Now, I don't put a lot of stock in preseason results, so I look more for signs of player cohesion, tactical moves that the coach might make, and that, as well as just other kind of little storylines to kind of keep an eye on throughout the beginning of the season. So, again, I don't put a lot of stock in the results, but when you score 5 goals, you win 2 games, that means something. Right? The fact that the Fire won the game doesn't mean anything. And if the Fire win all their games at Coachella and quote-unquote win the preseason, that has no bearing on how they're going to do in the actual season. But what it does is it gives them a winning culture, a winning attitude, a winning atmosphere, and they know that the way they're preparing and playing for some of these games or some of these particular circumstances within the games, that's the right way to go about it. Or when you beat a Kansas City team who is just in complete rebuild mode, new coach, though not new to us here, Rafa Wicki, did they finish their roster yet? I don't think they have 20 guys rostered. So when you have a team like that and you only beat them 1-0, albeit it is in the preseason, you'd want to have a better showing, I think. Now, I haven't really picked over the roster in detail to see who played when, where, and what kind of minutes, but that's just a couple things to take out of preseason results other than the fact that they just won. Also, great to see Mueller back on the pitch getting minutes after missing the entirety of last season with a heart condition. I know that was something that was very, very difficult for him to have to step away from, or deal with, to be able to step away from playing soccer, dealing with his heart condition, but knowing that there is an end goal here, that he can make it back on the pitch if he does everything that he needs to do, that the doctors and training staff are telling him, and it certainly has paid off. He's back out on the pitch. So hopefully he gets a good preseason run of form and can start earning some minutes back with the first team this season. Mueller when he's most dangerous, spreading the field very, very wide, which is what I think Berhalter wants to do. Like, we've seen Bamba be a great outlet, a great player, not just for the defenders and for the midfielders to have a quick outlet, but those switches, seeing from the right side of the field a long ball over the top to Bamba on the left. Or if you have Orahel or Davila playing a little bit more centrally and a little deeper as a D-mid, they're able to take that pass from a center back or laterally from another midfielder and then immediately turn and find Bamba. So if you also have a wide Chris Mueller coming in, whether it's as a substitute role for Jonathan Bamba, whether it's on the other side coming in as a sub for Zinkernagel, I don't think Mueller competes for that starting spot. I don't think he takes that starting spot away from either of those guys, but he can be a very effective substitute on the bench while maintaining that wide, fast play that we've seen with Bamba and Zinkernagel thus far. So I would love to see him get some real first-team minutes this first month or two of the season and see how his form is and how he's fitting in with a rebuilt team than when he originally signed. So great to see Mueller back up and participating. Speaking of Bamba, he and Gutman had a really good link up for a goal, so that's something that you really want to see, the left back and the left winger getting together, controlling the left side of the field, and then of course having that translate to something on the score sheet. Speaking of score sheet, Anton Saletros gets his first goal in a Chicago Fire uniform, albeit in the preseason. It was off a free kick. It was a screamer in the top corner of the net. This is a development to keep an eye on. Who's going to be taking these free kicks? We've seen Zinkernagel be able to serve up these quality balls, but is that going to be a tip of the hand? If you see Saletros lining up over it, they're going to shoot. If you see Zinkernagel lining up over it, more likely he's going to try to play a cross in. Maybe you have to have them both lining up over the ball and mixing it up a little bit to keep the opponent guessing here. But he rifled the shot. Looked great, looked like he is in great form, and he was very happy with the performance and of himself and the team post-game. The other big news, Boazi finally arrives. The South African center back, the 20-year-old star signing for the club in the offseason, he has arrived. He was down in Florida. I think the joke was Berhalter is down there in his warm-up in shorts, and Boazi shows up in like full-blown giant winter puffy coat, hood up, hat on, shorts and pants and double socks or whatever it looked like. So at the end of the day, though, Boazi is now with the club, who is back in Chicago for a few days before heading out to California. So great to see him. Would love to see the minutes that he gets in this preseason tournament out in California and just kind of how he fits in and starts to feel the MLS game. Last little bit of news from preseason, we saw a few pictures of USMNT head coach Mauricio Pochettino hanging out with Fire goalkeeper Chris Brady and chatting up with him a little bit. So I don't know exactly what was said between the two. I don't know if anybody does other than the two of them. But it's really encouraging to see Pochettino taking an interest in Brady in the preseason. We've seen Brady, and I've kind of said Brady is like that third or fourth keeper who they're not looking at him for the 2026 World Cup, but it's someone that they want to ingratiate into the USMNT system. Sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over my words there a little bit. They want to ingratiate him or ingrain him. I almost said indoctrinate him into the USMNT system and get him understanding it. What's it take to be an international player? What is Pochettino building? What's U.S. soccer building? And even though Brady's done it at a youth level, the senior level is a different beast altogether. So I think that USMNT is looking at Brady as someone who can fight for that starting spot in the 2030 World Cup cycle. So that would be fantastic for him to see there. Now, wrapping up the Florida preseason, 2 wins, some good plays, some good storylines to come out of it. Now the Fire are going to fly out to California in a few days. The Coachella Valley Invitational Tournament will begin on February 7th, and the Chicago Fire have their first game February 8th. They take on the Galaxy. They will also play Austin FC on February 11th and the Portland Timbers on February 14th. From there, season opener February 21st at Houston, and then the home opener the following week, February 28th against Montreal. What's nice is that the Fire, of their 3 Coachella Valley Invitational opponents, will only face the Timbers during the regular season, so in one of their cross-conference games. So great to see them get a little competition in the Western Conference, match up with clubs who have big aspirations. A Galaxy team who's reeling from Ricky Pooch but is looking to move on and bring in some big-name signings. Austin FC, who's trying to rebuild and bounce back from a down year for them last year. And then the Timbers, who made it to the play-in game like the Fire did last season and now are looking just like the Fire to make a leap into the top echelon of their respective conference. So I think these are really good matchups for the Fire, especially to test some of their new players and get a good look at how they're going to play together in this preseason. So we'll have a lot more to talk about once those games get underway. Now, moving into the next part of our show here, roster updates, rules, dates to remember, what is going on with Major League Soccer and the transfers of this season. So there are some rule updates, there are some date changes, and we're going to talk about that, and then we'll get into the actual transfers that we've been seeing here. So what has happened with the roster updates? Now, this is always a point of contention and discussion and debate within Major League Soccer circles. Everyone says, what's holding this league back? It is the roster rules. It is the strict rules. We can't spend money. We can't sign players. We can't trade players. It's always if we just opened up all our roster rules here, that would solve everything. And if we just joined the European calendar and had Pro and Rel, that would solve everything. Well, I say all those things because if only we had all these things, it would solve everything, right? If we just made all these numerous changes, well, that would solve everything, right? So opening up the roster rules and salary caps and things like that isn't going to solve everything. But they are giving clubs flexibility. They are giving clubs more than one way to construct a competitive roster. You don't have to be a billion-dollar spender in order to compete in MLS. There's other ways to do it. So looking at what the updates are here, think about how the Fire or your respective team can use some of these changes to help build out the model that they're currently trying to operate in. And the way I see the Chicago Fire right now is the Fire love their homegrowns, they love their local guys, they love their youth players. They have been sprinkling in a lot of young developmental pieces from overseas, which they're getting them on decent contracts. I'm not saying they're team-friendly contracts. I'm not saying they're player-friendly contracts. I think they're kind of good overall contracts where if the player performs, they'll be able to turn that player into a solid MLS player for the next several years. If the player really develops and reaches their potential or approaches their max potential, then the Fire would be able to transfer them on to a bigger league and recoup some money. And then they go out and they sign guys like an Anton Saletros, like an Andre Franco, like a Philip Zinkernagel or Jonathan Bamba, who have the quality to be playing in top 10 leagues around the world, but buy into the Chicago Fire mindset and bring that together here and use those guys to compete for trophies. Now the next part of it, which we've seen with the Neymar talk, with the Lewandowski talk, and now with Bernardo Silva being on the radar of the Chicago Fire, now the Fire are looking to bring in their version of Son, Messi, Forsberg, if you're the Red Bulls, who remember did help them get to an MLS Cup a couple seasons ago. So now the Fire are looking for that. So they're transitioning into that. And we will see if they end up moving off of the 2DP 4U22 model into a 3DP 3U22 model at some point. Maybe not this year, but next year, probably at some point. That way they can bring in those big DPs and really push for trophies over the next, if not this season, next season, and then the next 2 or 3 after that. So keep all of that in mind about how this roster build and construction is looking and how this project's looking. And then we got a new stadium in 2028 opening up, a new calendar opening up. I think the Fire are looking in about 2 years to be a top team in MLS and consistently competing for trophies. Not to say they can't do it now. I'm not trying to say that. And I know our friend John Donovan thinks they could be competing for the Shield this season. With the way, if they continue to grow and develop the way Berhalter has kind of set them along this path, and they bring in some of the talent, if Franco comes in and plays well when his injury is up, so those kind of things are there. But let's get into what actually has been going on here with MLS. So here's some of the updates and rule changes with MLS. First of all, speaking of signing players, there are 2 transfer windows during the 2026 season. We know that, but they've changed the dates of the windows. The primary transfer window is January 26th, tomorrow, Monday, through Thursday, March 26th. So you have 2 months for your primary transfer window here, your off-season transfer window in Major League Soccer here to get some deals done. There's going to be a lot more movement. There's been a lot of movement. There's going to be a lot more movement now as it is official, as you can register players, as you can make more deals. I mean, you guys are going to be glued to your phones as much as I am here. Going to try to get off to a productive work week to start, but man, there's going to be a lot of news coming through over the next couple of months with these transfers. And then the secondary transfer window starts Monday, July 13th, and ends, now an extended date, September 2nd. So we will have an extended summer window running from couple of months, right? July. Yeah, almost 2 months, from July 13th to September 2nd. So that's the first update. They've extended that summer window a little bit. Second update involves our Canadian teams. FIFA approved a request to allow all 3 Canadian MLS clubs to adhere to the registration periods established by U.S. Soccer rather than Canada Soccer, because we have clubs from another country playing in the U.S. domestic league. They formerly had to adhere to Canada's timelines, but now they can adhere to MLS's timelines. And so, per FIFA regulations, MLS clubs may request the international transfer certificate of any player under contract in another country only during one of 2 annual registration periods fixed by the relevant association. So there's no picking and choosing. For this, I'm going to use Canada. For this, I'm going to use the U.S. Or Montreal is going to follow the Canada schedule. Vancouver is going to follow the MLS one. Nope, all 3 of them are on the MLS transfer calendar. Also, some dates to keep in mind. Roster compliance is the day before the season opener, Friday, February 20th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So Friday, February 20th, let's take a look at that Fire roster and see who is where and what designations they get. And then the roster freeze, the pre-playoff roster freeze, begins October 9th. Okay, this next little bit here is for all you MLS sickos out there who just eat up all the roster rules and regulations that are out there. And I got to say, when I saw this breakdown in an article on MLSsoccer.com, I did get a little excited to see it because I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This summarizes everything we've been trying to figure out lately. So here are the new amendments, the new 2026 roster rules and regulations that are now in effect. Amendment number 1. Elimination of limitations on the number of cash for player trades a club can make each season. So unlimited cash for player trades now within Major League Soccer. Amendment number 2. Elimination of age restrictions and limitations on the number of intra-league loans a club can make each season. So now we are back to unlimited loans within MLS, amongst MLS teams, no age restriction, no number, anything like that. This was one I saw a lot of chatter on social media about people saying, why aren't there more intra-league loans? Why don't we see clubs loaning players more to other MLS clubs? We see it in the top leagues around the world, and we'll use the Chelsea example because they've had the reputation, for better or worse, of having their loan army where they sign as many of these up-and-coming players or great players and then loan them out just to keep them in shape and get them some more experience. And then let's see, do we sell them? Do we bring them up to the first team? Whatever the case is. And you see a lot of these top Premier League clubs will loan players to other Premier League teams lower down in the table, getting that quality competition, right? So why haven't we seen an MLS where they've had restrictions in place where you couldn't loan out so many players? I think that was an effort to have all the clubs in Major League Soccer develop their own academies, their own infrastructure for their youth teams, and invest in players. You don't want to just rely on, say, Dallas and Philly or Red Bulls to just flood the MLS market with all their academy players like out on loan. That way the Fire don't have to come up with their own academy, or Atlanta United doesn't have to come up with their own academy, because we'll just take a few Red Bull guys on loan. I'm just pulling those teams out of a hat to use as an example. I don't believe that was the case. But I can see that being one of the reasons why they put the number of loans on restriction, because you want to encourage your teams to build up their own infrastructure and development programs here. But now we're to the point where MLS is a global player in the transfer market, and we need to be able to have this flexibility. So great to see that they've taken the restriction on intra-league loans away. And hopefully that still gives American players, domestic players, another opportunity to maybe just go to a different system, go to a different coach, go to a different environment, and maybe you fit there a little bit better. Maybe it's not that the guy's a bad player for the Galaxy system, so they've got to loan him out someplace. Maybe he needs a little bit of a different environment, and the Galaxy can say, you know what, if we can't provide it for him, then maybe Portland can, or maybe Minnesota or St. Louis can. Maybe the player would be more comfortable there. Maybe he's got some friends from his soccer career already over there, and he can develop a little bit more there. And this might even be great with new coaches coming in, changing styles around and saying, this guy doesn't fit our style. Let's loan him out, and then maybe we can develop him into a player that does fit our style, or we can have him develop and progress with this other club who might want to purchase him permanently, or get him to a point where we can transfer him overseas or to another club. So I like having the flexibility, and removing restrictions I think is great here. Probably talked a lot more about loan restrictions than I ever planned on coming into this episode. Amendment number 3 here on the new rules. The league has removed the deadline for a player to be considered a domestic player for a season instead of an international player. Let me read that again, just make sure I got that right. The league has removed the deadline for a player to be considered a domestic player for a season instead of an international player. Okay, so if you have an international player who obtains a green card or work visa, whatever the case is, and can transition into a domestic player for roster construction purposes, they have removed that deadline. So you can get your international players to become domestic players much quicker now. That's going to be great for the Chicago Fire. As we know, they have 13 international players on the roster and only 8 available international roster spots. Amendment number 4. Clubs may agree that an international roster slot traded within or prior to the primary transfer window will return to the original club on a specific date within the secondary transfer window. These agreements must be definitive. So, this gives you a little bit more roster flexibility. I don't envy a GM job. I don't envy the coaching job here, trying to keep track of all this and how it's going to apply to your players, and who knows what's going to happen and how it could change in the next season or mid-season. But essentially, international roster spots, you can loan those out too now, which would be great for the Chicago Fire to say, hey, look, we anticipate moving 1 or 2 international guys. And I speculated in the last episode that Omari Glasgow might be a prime candidate for that, though I haven't heard any concrete reporting or even rumors to that. I just speculated on that one. But yeah, we could acquire an international roster spot from another team from now till that secondary transfer window. And then we just got to make sure that we as the Fire move an international player during that secondary transfer window, or whenever that particular slot reverts back to its original team. So you always had the ability to transfer and trade international roster spots. Now you can loan them out and get them back. There you go. Amendment number 5. Designated players, DPs, acquired via cash for player trades in the secondary transfer window may be added at the mid-season designated player salary budget charge. So as we know, designated players can be paid anything, and their cap hit will only reach a certain level. Their salary cap hit will only reach a certain dollar amount. But those being signed in the summer window, it was prorated. Now this just brings the cash for player trade DP scenario in line with that. I'm trying to think of any examples of where that might have occurred, or maybe the league wants to encourage some more movement, or the players want more and the coaches want more movement. And so this is going to help align that. And the sixth and final amendment announced here, players who have appeared on a game day roster are eligible to be placed in supplemental slot 31 as long as they meet the other slot 31 requirements. So more roster flexibility, bringing more players up to the senior team. And just because a player makes an appearance in an MLS game, no longer does that preclude him from being placed in a supplemental roster spot, or more likely starting the season in a supplemental slot and then getting a call up, appearing in a game, and now can't go back to that supplemental spot. It allows teams to get more experience for players. I think that's a great move. At the very least, it's one more guy available, considering the schedule congestion that's out there, playing a regular season and then one or two tournaments on top of whatever other international play that's out there. So I think that's a really good move. You still have to meet all the other supplemental slot 31 requirements, which I'm not familiar with. I didn't get a chance to go look them up, but it does provide a little bit of flexibility there. So big fan of all of that. Just to recap what has gone on with the Chicago Fire, since we are talking transfers and roster rules. Over this past off-season, the Chicago Fire have brought in midfielders Anton Saletros, Andre Franco, he was on loan previously, made that move permanent, and midfielder Robin Ludd. They have acquired forward Puso Detejan from South Africa, from TS Galaxy. More of a winger than a forward, but for the article's sake here, it's D mid forward goalkeeper. And they signed Jason Shukuluk from the second team. He's got his first team contract now. Also bringing in defender Bezeli Boazi from South Africa, Orlando Pirates, and goalkeeper Josh Cohen on a free agent deal. So the Fire have brought in 7 new players in this offseason, and they have shown the door to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different players. Yeah, shown the door. Maybe that's too harsh. That's not it. But on the way out, goalkeeper Brian Dowd, his option was declined. Defenders Justin Reynolds traded to Sporting Kansas City, who I think he's going to fit well over there. Defender Chase Gasper ended up retiring. Midfielders, Romanique Kwame's loan expired. Brian Gutierrez was transferred to Chivas in Liga MX. Colin Acosta had a mutual contract termination. But go back to the last episode where we talk about how that is considered a buyout, because if Acosta was just going to walk away from the money that the Fire owed, and it was a true, we're just terminating and walking away, then the Fire would not have had to use his buyout. But because he didn't want to leave the money on the table, or maybe the new club that he signed with in Poland couldn't match with the salary he was making, he would at least, I think, get the difference. And so the Fire had to use an actual contract buyout on him. So they got one more left this season. And then forward Tom Barlow had his option declined, and forward Yorgos Koutsias was transferred to FC Lugano. So those are the players out and the reasons why. One other thing is, I feel like I said that Jeff Gall had his option declined or was released, or whatever the case was. Jeff Gall is still on the roster. So I apologize to Jeff, and I apologize to you fans for thinking that Jeff was on the way out. But when we see them not pick up the option on Brian Dowd, they bring in Josh Cohen. They have some other CF2 keepers training with the first team this offseason. And we saw how Jeff Gall played in the playoffs against Philadelphia, how poorly he performed. He just looked lost out there for long stretches of these games, and the mistakes he made led directly to 2 Philly goals. I don't think it's a stretch to say that he doesn't have long with the Fire, but they've got Brady, they've got Cohen. Is Gall going to be the number 3? Are Gall and Cohen going to fight for the number 2? Or is there some young keeper that they are trying to groom to step up and be the next Chris Brady, be the next Gaga Slonina, right? Kind of thing. Be the next Sean Johnson even. So we'll see if anything happens with Jeff Gall. But that is, I do believe he takes up a senior roster spot, which is at a premium right now for the Chicago Fire. Let me just pull up the roster here and take a look at his designation. So right now, nope, he's on a supplemental slot. supplemental spot 21 to 24. So they would be able to bring in a supplemental player in the event that Jeff Gall is moved from the team. All right, let's talk a little bit of transfers here. Pulled up the MLSsoccer.com transfer tracker. There has been a lot going on. So we're going to go, like I always say, we're going to go lightning round here for the last 5-10 minutes or so and talk about the moves from around the league. So the first one is Real Salt Lake acquire Steen Spearings from Brøndby IF from the Danish Superliga side. This is a 29-year-old Netherlands youth international who gets a contract through the 27-28 season with RSL. So it looks like they are trying to bolster their midfield there. Similarly, LAFC have acquired Swedish midfielder Amin Budry. We're seeing a lot of Nordic players get moved. We bring in Seletros, we bring in Zinkernagel, and the rest of the league is like, maybe they're onto something over there. So I like to think that the Fire are starting a little bit of a trend here. You know, we go to South Africa, we get some guys. We go to Denmark and Sweden and get some guys. And look at everybody else is scrambling for it, right? The Galaxy, meanwhile, on the other side of LA, have extended Mateus Nascimento's loan from Botafogo. The Rapids have signed forward Donovan Phillip from NC State, most recently playing in college there. I did see, I can't remember if it was John Donovan or someone else was like, meanwhile, the Rapids' biggest move, signing a college player. There you go, Colorado. There you go. Austin FC have acquired Facundo Torres from Palmeiras. You guys remember Facundo Torres from Orlando City, giving the Chicago Fire fits during his time with the club, with his time playing for Orlando. So he's back, but thankfully he will be in the Western Conference. So Fire fans won't have to worry about him all that often. But Facundo Torres back in MLS. Meanwhile, Montreal have acquired Tomas Aviles on loan from Inter Miami. I think I saw someone out there say, CF Montreal, the king of the intra-league loan and acquisition. So CF Montreal does it again, picking up Tomas Aviles from Inter Miami. Inter Miami, meanwhile, signed goalkeeper Luis Barraza, formerly of DC United. San Diego FC signed Luca Bambino to a contract extension. Rapids signed Nico Hansen to a contract extension. Inter Miami have fully acquired the rights to Rocco Rios Novo, their goalkeeper who came up big for them during their MLS Cup run last season. And by the way, let's go back to that Miami Tomas Aviles loan and the change of the rule where you can loan out international roster spots. So Montreal gets center back Tomas Aviles on loan, and Miami gets an international roster spot. Miami also needs international roster spots because I do believe their projected starting lineup is completely made up of international players. So they just made a loan move for an international roster spot with CF Montreal. Looking at some other headlines, the Quakes have loaned Cruz Medina out to Chivas. Inter Miami have signed Daniel Pinter, a homegrown. Galaxy signed John Nelson to a contract extension. Atlanta United transfer out Edwin Mosquera to Independiente Santa Fe. So they have moved on from someone who they thought would be a piece in a rebuild for them. Edwin Mosquera back to Colombia. Maybe not back to, but down to Colombia. Minnesota United pick up Colombian winger Mauricio Gonzalez. Charlotte FC get Tyler Miller from Bolton Wanderers, goalkeeper there. So they're bolstering their goalkeeping. Let's see if there's any other big things here. These are some of the more recent moves. Nick Markanich goes to Houston. Griffin Yao gets picked up by the New England Revolution. Let's see. Miami have fully acquired Tadeo Allende from Celta Vigo. Nick Lima. Here's one that every MLS fan is going to know. Nick Lima of the San Jose Earthquakes has announced his retirement. He is 31 years old, has played 9 years with San Jose, also spent a few seasons with Austin and a year with the New England Revolution. Played defender, 9 goals and 20 assists in 211 appearances, 211 MLS appearances, as well as 9 caps with the U.S. men's national team. So this is an excellent career, kind of an old school MLS defender who is now hanging up the boots. And it's just, I never liked playing against Nick Lima. Not that I ever laced up the boots myself against him, but, as a Fire fan, man, he was always tough to play against. So wishing Nick Lima well in the future, and congrats on a great career. Let's see if there's anything that's going to really impact the Fire here. So Orlando City have transferred Luis Muriel to Atletico Junior. So they are down one of their players who they thought would bring them back to the top of the table last season. The 34-year-old Colombian is now back in Colombia with Atletico Junior, and this opens a designated player spot on the roster. Orlando City retain Martin Ojeda and Marco Pasalic as their remaining DPs. So you could see Orlando City look to bring in a designated player either the rest of this winter transfer window or the summer transfer window, and really make a push. I would expect if they're mid-table, they would do that. However, if they're still towards the bottom of the table over the summer, then it's another rebuild. Another name of note here in the transfer world, San Diego FC have re-signed forward Emmanuel Boateng. So he got a contract through 2026 with an option through June of 2027. So the Ghanaian native has been in MLS going back, let's take a look at these seasons here, all the way since 2026 when he started with the Galaxy and then had other stints with DC, Columbus, New England, and now San Diego. So, we see Nick Lima, an MLS legend in name, retiring, and we see Emmanuel Boateng getting another contract extension here. So let's see if there's any other big news that's going to impact the Fire. Anything Eastern Conference related is what I'm looking for here on this list of transfers. We see the Union have acquired Danish defender Jafet Seri Larsen. Some kind of Fire adjacent news, Cincinnati have signed Tom Barlow. So we saw that the Fire did not pick up Barlow's option, and he ends up in Cincinnati via free agency. He gets a contract through 27 with an option through 27-28. It seems like Tom Barlow is on the Kai Kamara track here, just without the goal scoring, it seems. And even Chris Albright, GM at Cincinnati, said, "Tom's a forward with a wealth of experience, and his skill set is an excellent addition to our attack. He has high character and a great teammate. We'd like to welcome him to FC Cincinnati." I wonder if this is one of those signings where it's like, okay, welcome to the club. Now tell us everything you know about your former club. How can we beat them? Kind of a thing. Red Bulls have signed defender Robert Veloder from Sporting Kansas City. So trying to potentially replace, was it Sean Nealis? Which Nealis? That ended up getting a contract with another team. So that is a move over there. And that's it. That's where I'm going to end this lightning round transfer tracker update. So we've seen a lot of the Western Conference clubs making moves, and there's been a few notable exceptions to the Eastern Conference clubs. But I would tell you, the Eastern Conference was so good last season, and I don't think many of the Eastern Conference clubs are going through major transformations like the Galaxy may have to, or like Austin may have to, Colorado, Kansas City may have to. I don't even know what the situation with Salt Lake is. Like, who's their core? They've moved some pieces over the last couple seasons. Now, that's not to say that Atlanta United and New England might not need a rebuild, but I think on the whole, Eastern Conference clubs really aren't in the market to be making major roster shifts as much as the Western Conference clubs are. Just my general thoughts. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Let you guys get back to enjoying the rest of your day, your week, your weekend. I hope everyone is staying warm. We've had some terrible weather in Chicago the last few days. Lots of snow, very cold temperatures. But you know what? Something we're used to. Too bad I just couldn't be down with covering the team out in Florida or California at this point. Love to do that one day. We'll see. Maybe when I'm old and retire, I can go hang out and watch spring training, so to say. Go hang out and watch the preseason matches. But with that, Again, I thank you all for listening, for tuning in, for being a part of the conversation, for helping grow the conversation around the Fire and Major League Soccer. Find me on social media at Glasshouse Soccer. Email me, glasshousesoccer@gmail.com. And as always, let's go Fire.